to you, sir. We are grateful to you for kindly sparing some of your valuable time to address us, despite your busy schedule and preoccupations. At the outset, let me briefly introduce Shri Sarkar. Prior to his current assignment as an economic advisor, Shri Sarkar worked as India's director at the SAARC Secretariat in Kathmandu from 2018 to 2021 and looked after finance, trade, and economic related issues. He was a consultant at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, IIFT, New Delhi, and worked on issues related to multilateral and regional agencies like WTO and EU. Shri Sarkar holds an MSc in Public Management and Governance from London School of Economics and Political Science, in addition to MA and MPhil in Economics from the JNU. Currently, Shri Sarkar is India's G20 finance lead at the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. He has recently been elected as the G20 GPFI co-chairman from 2024 to 2026. Congratulations, sir. Friends, Shri Sarkar is an acclaimed author and orator on economic and trade-related issues. I'm sure we all would have a much better idea about the importance of G20 on our economy from his address today. G20 summit is just a month away, as you are aware. Sir, I would like to seek your indulgence in making an observation on some recent reports. From a study carried out by the World Bank Group's G2PX initiative, it has been found that as the COVID pandemic raged on, countries with robust digital platforms were able to provide 51% of their citizens with financial aid through digital means compared to a far lower 16% in countries that could not rely on digital database and platforms. This clearly indicates that digital public infrastructure, DPI, has become critical and indispensable in today's world. In this context, it would be interesting to know how we have fared as compared to others globally, considering our huge rural population. I understand that industries across sectors such as healthcare, education, communication, and finance are increasingly relying on digital networks for the delivery of crucial services. DPI is playing an important role as a common enabler. Therefore, it appears that the benefits from a global DPI that enables cross-border data flow will transcend geographical, economic, and societal boundaries. Such a framework will facilitate global financial and social inclusion by enhancing service delivery, minimizing leakages, promoting innovation, and effective resource utilization by eliminating physical and cost barriers. However, on the flip side, there is also some scope for digital piracy. I do not know to what extent DPI is insulated from frauds. We shall be grateful, sir, if you throw some light in this regard as well. Besides, in spite of the growing importance of DPI, there are also some bottlenecks that hinder its global adoption. For example, India's Unified Payments Infrastructure, UPI, has presence in some form in the UAE, Singapore, Mauritius, Nepal, Bhutan, France, and the UK. However, developing such digital infrastructure has been mostly an isolated effort and is contained within geographic and national boundaries. I personally feel such fragmented efforts fail to promote global cooperation and sharing of knowledge, thereby making best practices difficult. In this context, I would be grateful if you kindly share your views on the scope of creation of a mutually adoptable framework of DPI under the aegis of G20. Sir, in order to reap the maximum benefits from digital connectivity, free flow of data is absolutely necessary. However, governments across the world have opted for different approaches to data sovereignty, including localization, classification, privacy, and protection. As a result, the G20 economies had failed to arrive at a consensus during the Osaka summit in 2019 on cross-border data flows. The Financial Stability Board, FSB, has outlined a roadmap for enhancing cross-border payments. but a global roadmap for cross-border data flow is yet to be mutually adopted and enforced. This can be done by adoption of priority areas identified by the FSB to implement projects that enhance cross-border arrangements by the target year of 2027. In this regard, I would request you, sir, to elucidate the initiatives that the G20 Task Force on Digital Public Infrastructure for Economic Transformation, Financial Inclusion and Development has taken in recent times. To reap maximum outcomes and scale DPIs across geographies, the involvement of stakeholders beyond public authorities is required. Engaging private players will enable reduction of transaction costs, ensure information symmetry, and pave the way for structural data exchange. In addition to these, competition and innovation through private sector association can level up the existing quality of service delivery and security measures. Furthermore, microfinance institutions, MFIs, should be integrated with DPIs to ensure that technology enables greater access to services to an increased population at a lower cost. In this context, I would request you, sir, to share your thoughts on the scope for investments in DPI as an emerging area of business. Before I conclude, I would like to highlight that adoption of a global DPI for cross-border payments uncovers the threats to cybersecurity and associated risks. It is therefore imperative that appropriate safeguards need to be in place to ensure data security and privacy. Sir, I am confident that steps are being taken for necessary protection, and you would echo my thoughts as well. With these words, I would now request Shri Sarkar to commence his address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naresh Pachisia, and also distinguished guests. This is a pleasure and huge honor for me to be here and speak about G20 issues. Thanks for your kind words, and thanks for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. I will speak on the G20, and you have pointed out a large number of issues and very, very pertinent questions, and also the issues which are being deliberated, not only in G20 but beyond. But to the extent possible, I would try to cover and try to answer. But feel free to stop me anywhere when I do not make adequate sense. Before I also start, let me point out, I also see it's a huge pleasure because I see some of the old known faces here. So I'm really feeling very happy to be here and speak on G20 issues. G20 is a very, very complex, interplay of economics, politics, and many other things. So I would try to, if you allow, try to be little more informal and try to exchange our views in whichever way it is best suited. So since I am supposed to speak on India's G20 presidency, I would touch upon the G20 as a whole, and then the working group where I lead that working group, financial inclusion, the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, or GPFI, which is so. Let me begin with the little bit of history of G20. Now, G20 is one of the most powerful multilateral group. And over the years, it has established itself as the premier leaders-led platform in the to solve economic challenges globally, both in the short term and the long term. Now, can you see all of
Yes,
this?
yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Also.
yeah. So, but these are the countries. And you would see the flags that India's flag. This I'll come little later also. That India's presidency and Indonesia was the just outgoing last year's they were the presidency. So there is a system of troika, which would also come back. Like troika means the current presidency, the immediate past presidency, and the next one. So now, as I said, that this is the most premier economically powerful group, and now why it is so. This group, 85% of the global GDP contributes, 75% of global trade, more than 2/3 of population reside in this G20. Now, what are the principles through which this G20 works? This is essentially the consensus-based group that the policy actions. And if I may take this opportunity to say that it was established in way back in 1999, when this was a response to initially the G20 was not at a leaders level. It was only the finance ministers level. It came up as to the response of the financial crisis that was there in 1998. And then finance ministers of these G20 countries formulated this informal group where the economic exchange of information with a view to stabilize the financial stability, and that's how it came up. And then a decade later, this was elevated as a leaders level. So that was the beginning of the financial this G20. And there was the participation of international organizations also there, because essentially the financial stability aspects keeping in mind. The developed and developing, as I said, that this is a diverge group of countries in G20. There are G7 countries, there is emerging countries like India, Brazil, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and Korea, and other countries. Guest countries are all, and guest organizations are also invited at the discretion of the presidency. The vital role in shaping and strengthening the global governance on all major international economic issues are governed by this G20. Now, these are the institution in global institutions. They are also regularly participating actively. So it's G20 is essentially these countries as well as these international organizations. They do take part effectively. Now, G20 presidency rotates annually to ensure regional balance over time. So there are 19 countries plus EU, and then there are 5 groups, and India happens to be in the second group. And that's how, like, in the last year it was Indonesia, this year India, next year the Brazil, and interestingly the next to Brazil it would be South Africa. So they were all emerging economies. So if the agenda setting is not now for in favor of the emerging countries, developing countries, it will never be. So therefore, India as a presidency has a very special role to play to talk about the emerging country needs. In fact, our Prime Minister also had early January, had a meeting with the global South countries, more than 100 countries. And it was decided that India presidency would be the voice of global South. So where we have said that global South's concerns are India's concerns. In fact, one of the elements that the main pillar of our agenda setting is the global South agenda. Now, as I said, that the presidency can invite countries, guest countries. So in addition to the G20 countries, we invited 9 regular, both finance track, and I'll come back. There is within G20, there are 2 major track. One is finance track, one is Sherpa track. So finance track, the finance track and Sherpa track, there are 9 countries were invited in guest countries. In addition to that, finance track has invited additional 4 countries, which are Morocco, Nepal, Senegal, and Switzerland. Now, as I said, that there are the 2 parallel tracks through which the G20 works, which are essentially the finance track and the Sherpa track. Typically, what is Sherpa track is essentially those are which do not fall within the finance track. It's like health, like in developmental other issues, employment conditions, then environment, various other issues which are not purely finance related, and that falls under the Sherpa group, which includes education and others. So finance track, how it works are there are 7-8 working group and work stream that finance. The head of finance track is the finance minister, and below which the deputies. G20 finance track has a unique provision of finance ministry and central bank. So there are 2+2 kind of arrangement. The central bank governors and ministers, these 2 are the head of the finance group, and therefore then deputy governor and the secretaries. So there are 7 working groups and work stream, like framework working group, international financial architecture working group, infrastructure working group, international taxation, global partnership for financial inclusion. I happen to be the lead of that group, sustainable finance working group, and joint finance and health task force, and financial sector issues. And the right hand side is the Sherpa track. As you can see, that agriculture and all those. So that is a different track, and I'll limit myself the GPFI with the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. Now, impact of the G20 so far. I mean, this 2008 crisis management, more than 1.1 trillion US dollar was injected in the system through the G20 system. Even during the COVID time, global coordination were done, and also the Financial Intermediary Fund was also created under the Italian finance presidency, G20 presidency. Then various others, like our leaders, also aligned the G20 objectives in terms of the sustainable development goals. Therefore, like sustainable development goals are also very much part of the G20. Now, Indian presidency, as you know, that during the last 1 year, India has been in the forefront of the global agenda setting in terms of G20 agenda. And this is a very opportune time for India to set a global agenda, economic agenda that would not only serve the purpose of the advanced economies, but also the emerging countries and global South countries. That has been, and while we were deciding our priorities and the agenda, we always took note of various aspects that should be the emerging country centric, people centric, and also must have the global context. It cannot be only the one-sided story. So when in the 1st December 2022, we got the presidency. And then, as I said, that agenda setting was done in a very, very careful manner. And we also discussed it with various stakeholders, including the international organization, domestic stakeholders. And since it's a very diverse countries, there are G7 countries, there is emerging countries, interests are very, very divergent. And since the decision making process is consensus based, so therefore it's very important and challenging that only one-sided story cannot go on, because we will not get the buying from the emerging countries. It has been an extremely difficult time to get a consensus on issues under the G20. But still we have managed to get and pull through. So maybe during the later part of the discussion, we can mention how various issues other than economic, political issues are also coming in because of the geopolitical issues like in Russia and Ukraine, and that has been one of the major challenges which otherwise has created a lot of issues, but then somehow we have managed to, as a presidency, to deal with it and got the results. Many people say that yes, there was no communique so far, but then communique and the chair summary and outcome documents are all the same, and only the name is different, so that we can discuss subsequently. Now, as I said that, and as I indicated that India has also additionally invited some 9 countries plus 4 countries, and this would be India will be bringing the 43 heads of delegates, leaders in September 9-10, where the G20 summit will take place. Now, India's key priorities, I'll just briefly touch upon and then go to the financial inclusion part. So today's no agenda can be without the green development, climate issues. So energy transitions for developing nations across the world. Today, one of the most severe and important global challenge we face is the climate issues. So that has been our in our agenda, and climate issues must be such that responsibilities should be divided in a manner which is the common but differentiated responsibilities, because today's climate change is not only because of the some particular emerging countries, but it's the other way around. I mean, suppose we stop emitting, if the emerging countries stop emitting tomorrow, whether the pollution and the climate issues will be over? No, the answer is no. So it's just was not created in one day. So therefore, when the developed countries, G7 countries, they were growing just like now, they were polluting without any restrictions. So therefore, the bulk of the responsibilities would need to be taken by them rather than imposing on us. So therefore, it is important to negotiate in that direction, that yes, we are not hesitant to take our responsibilities, but it has to be differential. and equitable. Now, also the accelerated inclusion and resilient growth for MSMEs. The bulk of the employment, across the globe is generated through MSME sector. So therefore, we cannot ignore the MSMEs, and resilient, they must remain resilient in all environment, be it climate, be it financial crisis or any other things. So therefore, that part was also taken care of. Then accelerating the progress on sustainable development goals. No development can be balanced if those do not direct themselves towards the sustainability aspects. So therefore, SDG 2030 agenda are extremely important. Technological transformation and digital public infrastructure has been the entire world is going through an enormous amount of challenge, and be it employment, be it income, be it climate. So we need to think of having some kind of means and infrastructure and the technology driven that can solve these problems at scale. So therefore, the problem solving ability, innovative methods, technology led solutions would need to be there, because we need to solve these problems. The magnitude of the problems are huge. Therefore, we need technological solutions, innovative solutions. Then multilateral institutions. Some of the old institutions like World Bank, IMF, we have seen how the countries have been facing problems in terms of debt and other vulnerabilities. Like Sri Lanka, we have seen some of the neighboring countries where debt has been an issue. So unless these and things have changed over the years, like there is a need for having multilateral institutions level reforms, so that the appropriate demands and appropriate, the changing environments can be addressed suitably. Also, if we cannot ensure the women's participation, not only that, women-centric development, half of the developmental story will remain untold. So therefore, that has also been an endeavor from our part to keep in our agenda. Now, I'll just quickly go through this because these are not the areas which I deal with this, but then nevertheless, these are the part of the G20, which is like finance track priorities, G20, various work stream is. As I said, that strengthening the multilateral development banks challenges, then managing global debt, strengthening the global financial safety net, then assessing the macro financial implication of central bank CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. Then sustainable finance is that there is the need for, if we talk about sustainability, if we talk about environment, there has to be sustainable finance, and there has to be timely and adequate resources. In fact, that also brings in the table, the agenda of multilateral development banking roles and reforms. Capacity building is also an important element for any agenda in G20 and beyond. Infrastructure remains, we need not emphasize, in fact, we cannot overemphasize the importance of infrastructure. Now, what kind of infrastructures? Like global, urban infrastructure, the cities of tomorrow, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. So infrastructure should be part of our agenda. Then framework is also risks that are emerging globally. Then developing a country-driven assessment of the macroeconomic impact of climate change. Similarly, the health also remains an issue, because of the pandemic has taught us huge lessons. And then there has been a fund that G20 has produced and established, which is not essentially like another WHO fund. No, it's not. It does talk about the pandemic preparedness. It's not financing. Like, just you need to have a system where we would have some kind of prior knowledge and preparedness for dealing with these kind of pandemic and related challenges, and so that our readiness are in place. The international taxation, as you know, that tax issues are very, very important, both in terms of they having equitable systems. Like, we cannot have in one corner of the globe where all the tax norms and tax evaders can get a heaven where they can establish their unit and get all the tax evasion done through the. So therefore, there is a need to have a common approach on tax related issues, so that global economies do get a level playing field. Now, there's the financial sector issues, which are like we are having a lot of issues, the cyber issues, so financial stability issues that we have seen, and various big tech companies are also coming and doing a lot of financing and other activities. So whether we have this robust and adequate kind of regulatory regime, that is also important. So and the financial inclusion also as an important element of this the whole finance track. Because the financial inclusion does provide the last mile connectivity, and which has a huge positive impact in terms of creating more opportunities, employment, and therefore the higher trajectory of growth and ultimately attaining the development. So so this and also since I am the lead of this GPFI, so I'll concentrate on these, how we are taking this agenda forward, and how the DPI, digital public infrastructure, which India is the global leader. Many of us may not know that today the digital public infrastructure, as this was developed, and India Stack was developed here in India, and that today for the first time in the history of G20, we have been able to get support from all countries, and unanimously this digital public infrastructure report has been endorsed a few days back in Gandhinagar. So I'll be able to talk a little later about that. So I have, as I said, that these are the background of the financial the G20, and now I'll talk about the financial inclusion in the G20 and DPI. See, why this financial, it is beyond doubt now that financial inclusion does help attaining global growth and development, and therefore it is important. And that is the reason why our leaders established this global partnership for financial inclusion way back in 2010. Now, excuse me. Yeah. Now, since then, a huge amount of success has been there in terms of financial inclusion since 2010. But still, there are a lot more to be done. Today, even 1.4 billion people are unbanked globally. 2.7 billion people are still offline, which the senior vice president was talking about, that the risks and other things we would need to take into account. Yes, it is taken into account, but now the issue is, how do you solve it? Now, as I said, that SME credit gap is 5 trillion US dollar gap. So the SME sector, so just not that in the emerging economies. In fact, one of the presentation the other day I was part of, some American person was saying that even US SME sector there is also around 50% gap in financing. So SME is while the SME sector globally provides huge amount of employment opportunity, around 50% globally, and in some emerging countries, 70%, even 80% employment is generated through the SME sector. So therefore, it is important that we do provide adequate attention to that. Now, poor access to the financial services have been due to the high transaction costs. And these 1.4 billion people who are still unbanked, unfortunately, the bulk of these 1.4 billion people are women. So we need to work on that, and that is how the importance of digital public infrastructure, like when the women cannot travel long distance to the banks, let the bank come to the houses. So digital public infrastructure can help in terms of bridging this gap. The global cost of remittances is another agenda, long-standing agenda in G20, that it used to be 10%, 12% cost in sending the remittances. The emerging countries is a major recipient of remittances. So if the 10%, 12% goes on the only sending the money, so that has been a constant agenda, and the target has been the SDG target to reduce it below 3%. Today, we are around 6%, but we need to work much more than what we have done so far. Now, as I said, that financial inclusion and its importance, the financial inclusion, of course, creates a lot of, also the financial inclusion essentially is ensuring that the people, the excluded people, the use and access to the financial products, which are at reasonable cost and a sustained basis. So therefore, bringing the excluded people, the marginalized people, both people and the entity, SMEs, into the system, and so that they remain in the system, so that they can avail these the credit and other facilities, and that has a multiplier impact on their economic abilities and income. Now, the role of GPFI Global Partnership of Financial Inclusion, is a very unique kind of platform, which is not only G20 countries. These are beyond G20 countries. G20 countries, they are. This is one of the perhaps the only one group within the G20 that works for the global financial inclusion. And they talk about the regulatory aspects, SME finance, financial inclusion, consumer literacy, remittance, financial consumer protections. These are important aspects which the GPFI talks, because not only the bank, even if we open the bank account and those are not used, and the people do not have access and do not remain in the system, then they do not get the full benefit of it. So therefore, effective financial inclusions would need like 3 dimensions. One is access, one is usage, and another was quality. Access is like having a bank account. Usage is like basically not keeping these accounts idle. We need to learn how to use it. Not only learning, but also we must have some money to run my business, to remain in the system. So therefore, if the systems are such very easy to operate and less costly, for example, UPI is cost less. That is why we see even the street vendors, they do use the UPI, and therefore they remain in the system. So therefore, if since it is the DPI and its cost is 0, these people, once included, they tend to remain in the business, and that's how they tend to gain and contribute. So that is the reason why digital public infrastructure, when we talk about it, what we essentially mean is the open, interoperable, inclusive system empowered by the technology, and which provide services at the society level to both private as well as public sector. So these are the digital public infrastructure way, and which brings this financial inclusion more effective. Now, as I said, that the origin of this GPFI, Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, was 2010. And since then, a lot of work has taken place. I think I have covered this. Now, the role of GPFI, they essentially and typically, they coordinate and facilitate the implementation of financial inclusion policies and initiatives, identify and share the best practice and experiences. Like again, G20, what it does, G20 as a forum, as it is a much more informal, and it doesn't set any target, but it facilitates countries to set and implement various objectives and policies to their use and best interest. And also the dialogue and monitoring the financial inclusion commitment, and encourage and supervise the both private sector and public sector. But G20 is essentially a intergovernmental body. But since it's a global platform, this does provide menu and roadmap for private sector as well. GPFI membership, as I said, that it's not only the G20 countries, those who are interested and participating, they can participate. So they have these member countries, and we have 2 long-term co-chair selected, one from the emerging countries and one from the developed or advanced economies. The 2 co-chairs also provide the roadmap for the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. I think that Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, they provide 3 years roadmap, which remains the guiding principles for the taking forward the various agenda under Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. In fact, during the last couple of years, the main 2 priorities areas have been the digital financial inclusion and SME finance. These 2 have been the major priorities of this group as a whole. So the digital financial inclusion and the SME financing provisions have been built in by Indian presidency also. And these are the deliverables that have come up. Like there has been under Chinese presidency, there was a high level principles for digital financial inclusion. Then the digital financial inclusion was a key priority in 2020 Financial Inclusion Action Plan under Saudi presidency also. Working on the SME finance regulatory toolkit from the Indonesian presidency has also brought in a lot of positive efforts towards the SME financing. Now, why digital financial inclusion? Because we have seen that it's a huge challenge. 1.4 billion people are still unbanked, which is a huge number. Then globally, only about 50 countries, 55 countries have a reasonably good payment system. The rest of the countries, they do not have a payment system. So therefore, like, and then we have seen that today this one of the main reason is the high transaction cost. And since the digital mode can reduce the cost, that would be helpful to bridge this gap. It also can strengthen the information infrastructure and asymmetry. It can remove the information asymmetry, and by definition, a digital mode is egalitarian. But it's a separate thing that those who have access, only then they are egalitarian. If they do not have access, then it is otherwise. That part, of course, is true. But then, as a technology, it doesn't differentiate between poor and rich when you have access. Then it also enables over 30% of adults in the sub-Saharan Africa region have mobile money accounts. Even this during COVID time, we have seen that this growth of digital has been there, not only just India and across the world. As I said, the risks are there. Risks of digital exclusion. So unless we design our technologies, design our policies in such a manner that the most vulnerable people are also get access, there is a risk of exclusion, risk of data misuse and cyber frauds, consumer protections risks. Then poor financial literacy is also is a risk. Now, as I said, that why DPI financial inclusion, it can reduce the traditional barriers to access. It is inclusive. It has openness, scalability, and interoperability. I think many of you may know the something is called India Stack. India Stack is the three things. One is digital identity, one is the payment, which is essentially the UPI, and the data governance. I think you would, some of you or all of you would be knowing that data protection bill was passed just 2 days back. And if you see that that has created huge amount of opportunity, and India has made a huge progress in terms of account opening and the financial inclusion. In fact, this Jan Dhan, if I may say that mission, which had enabled us opening around 462 million low-cost account, that has a huge jump, and that had helped us achieving from, say, 20 plus percentage point from for the account opening penetration to 80% in a span of 7 years, which otherwise, without the DPI, digital public infrastructure, like Aadhaar, like UPI, it would have taken 47 years. So that in that way, India has been the pioneer in terms of financial inclusion, and that is what we have been able to showcase and push through the global agenda in financial inclusion. And this is, and then digital financial inclusion and through DPI has been the major deliverable under the Indian presidency. This is what I was talking about. This curve, if you see that India achieved the bank account ownership coverage up to 80% by 2019. But in 2011, it was around somewhere 20% plus. So within a span of 7-8 years, what we have got is 80%. That would have taken 46 years. Now, US dollar billion, 4.5 billion was transferred during COVID directly into the bank account of 160 million beneficiaries. Now, what kind of this India stack, how it has helped? Like today, Aadhaar is, we have more than 1.3 billion Aadhaar. Then we have 14.8 billion eKYC. the eKYC, the cost has been such a drastic reduction. It used to be around $8 to $9. Now it is around 4 cents. So this is because of this DPI that has enabled us to reduce cost in such an extent. Then we have GSTN of 1.08 billion. Today, the UPI transactions, in all payments, 75% of this UPI. In this July month, the transaction, the volume of transaction, volume was around 15.3 lakh crore, which was 15.3 lakh crore in July month. Compared to that, it was the last year July was around 10.7 lakh crore. So this is the kind of growth we are achieving in India in terms of financial inclusion payments. Now, another important things that have come up, the account aggregator. I think some of you would know that account aggregator framework, there's more than 5.38 million account aggregator linked, that would enable that automatically one doesn't need to go to the bank. I mean, this thing, if you click, then the bank, it is so well connected, so they will do the verification and other things, and within few minutes, you can get your loan done. So therefore, there's so far almost 6 million account have been linked. So that is also creating a lot of positive contribution. Now, what has been the DPI's impact in financial inclusion in India? As I indicated, 650 million people receive benefits directly into their accounts, and about US dollar 322 billion transfer directly. A cost of loan processing declined by almost 75% after the launch of the account aggregator framework. eKYC, as I said, that from 500, it has come down substantially. Now, the many countries during the process of Ajani has said that, look, your Aadhaar is so costly. As a small countries, what do we do? This thing, there is a perception that this is a huge cost intensive, but if you see that in whole of this Aadhaar mechanism, in fact, costed us around $1 billion. McKinsey study have shown that the digital identity alone can enable the GDP growth from 3.5% to 13%. So therefore, this is the full power of DPI, digital public infrastructure, which is open, interoperable, like Aadhaar, like UPI, and account aggregator. So therefore, but then while India made expenditure of $1 billion, but within only the central government schemes alone, we have been able to save around $27 billion. So therefore, it's not about only the expenditure; it is a savings also. Now, the DPI impact, we have seen that the DPIs have also been found and being used by the other countries, like these M-Pesa in Kenya. Bangladesh also has Village Phone Pay. Similarly, Prompt Pay in Thailand. Ghana has also, and Brazil has a PIX, which is also quite a bit of success. So therefore, it's not that no countries are doing. I mean, many countries are adopting DPI essentially because of their ability to solve problems at a very minimalistic cost and to gain the higher level of efficiency. Now, so therefore, in G20, as I said, that India, we we set a priority, which is the policy recommendations for advancing financial inclusion and productivity gains through digital public infrastructure. As I said, the digital public infrastructure, we essentially, there is no unique definition and of digital DPI, but we have been able to work with the existing understanding, which are essentially open, interoperable, inclusive system powered by the technology to enable providing services at a society level to the by the the both private and public sector. So therefore that and in Indian context, the DPI are like Aadhaar, UPI, and account aggregator and data, the governance and data sharing issues. So when we started our agenda setting during January in this year, everybody used to ask, what is DPI? And during this journey of 7-8 months, we have been able to convince not only the G7 countries, but also the developing countries and emerging countries. We have been, I'm very happy that the 10 days back, 15 days back in Gandhinagar, in the meeting of the finance ministers of all G20 countries, we have been able to find support from all countries. When I say support from all countries, to adopt these policy recommendations for advancing financial inclusion and productivity gains through digital public infrastructure, essentially driven by India. And this is for the first time in the history of G20, this DPI agenda have been endorsed and unanimously. So that has been a very important, but if I can say that achievement from the G20 presidency in our G20 India presidency. Now, what are the outline for the policy recommendations? It's essentially foster the responsible use of digital public infrastructure. It has to be curated. It has to be designed in a manner that is responsible, that doesn't exclude the poorest of the poor. Otherwise, the basic purpose would be defeated. Develop well-designed DPIs. It talks about that, enabling the environment through which the wide range of acceptable good practices. In fact, the digital public infrastructure, DPI, is unique in the sense that this encourages both private and public. The private sector will use the public rail like Aadhaar, like UPI and other things, and develop. So therefore, and add value. So therefore, the regulators would regulate and the developers, innovators would innovate. So therefore, it's a combination of such that regulator must not be such that would be devoid from the innovation, which is the need of the hour. So the digital public infrastructure in India is a typical case which has achieved this extremely well, that while the regulators are regulating and the private sectors are innovating. So this is a combination that is going hand in hand and advancing financial inclusion and achieving higher level of growth and opportunities. Now, encourage the appropriate risk-based regulation and supervision. That's what I was just telling about. They promote sound international governance arrangements. Like one of the important element we have faced that, as I said, that I would be slightly informal, like in the course of this G20, the G20 is a forum, is the most powerful forum, and the G7 countries, they have slight difficulties that issues and leadership is coming from the emerging countries. They have some kind of problems that we cannot. So first time, so we had a lot of problems, not problems, I would say difficulties in terms of having, I had at least 25 to 30 bilateral meetings with emerging, I mean, the G7 countries and emerging countries to tell, look, DPIs are actually working. Many people do not understand that UPI-like things. Today, our street vendors, they know what is UPI and they use it. But please believe me, even the US people, the treasury people, they do not understand it. What is that? And it is so simple. It is so costless. And it's very difficult for them to understand. But somehow we have been able to make all those, regulatory and the other aspects. In fact, our involvement in some of the international organizations like World Bank and BIS. In fact, World Bank, we have got this policy recommendations prepared by the World Bank with the huge amount of input from our presidency. And also the BIS is one which I showed you a beautiful graph that where otherwise it would have taken 47 years. That graph was taken from BIS. So therefore, it's not that only the India is talking about its own success. No, we are just reproducing what the international communities are saying. Now, you may say that you just now said that US and the G7 countries do not understand, and at the same time you are saying that international. You are quoting the international. So the difference is that those who are a technical organization like BIS, they do very well understand that what UPIs, what India's tech are doing in the field of the financial inclusion, advancing financial inclusion, and gaining the efficiency. This is DPI is just not for emerging countries. It is equally for the advanced economies. It's just not for the government. It's equally for the private sectors. So therefore, as I said, that the DPI is an approach which is, I would say, in many sense, can solve our problems with responsibly. And I'm sure that as we move along from here in next couple of years, I can tell not that I am dealing with it, and that's what I am saying. Because the economics can tell and suggest that the DPI, the future of DPI is extremely important, and future of financial inclusion will lie how DPI would be used. With this, let me stop and thank Chamber of Commerce, Bharat Chamber of Commerce, once again for inviting me. I shall be very happy to speak. I know these are not very, very, very easy and kind of, these are very technical issues. And thank you for your attention. Thanks for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sarkar. It was an excellent presentation of G20. See, I mean, all of us would agree that India's presidency of G20 is a very, very proud moment for us. And the manner in which you, in a very top-down approach, starting from the history of G20, its formation, and zooming into the DPI and financial inclusion, I think you've explained it so well. And I'm sure all the members present here have been illuminated with all the ideas, all the information that you have shared. Now, I would like to open the floor for Q&As. Any questions for Mr. Sarkar? Please come forward. Thank you.
That it is a women-led development. So how will they give women the power to come to the fore and lead?
Maybe you can answer one-to-one, because some of these questions.
And there's one more question related with it. the DPI you said will help the bank to reach women who are unbanked. So how is DPI going to help that sector? Like, and how we as normal people can spread the awareness of banking to such women who are unbanked?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the questions. If I may ask, if you don't mind, do you submit the ITR? ITR. So when is the authentication you do? Earlier, what you used to do, like you used to get take a printout after that, then sign it, and then you used to send it to Bangalore. Today, you don't need to do that. Yes, so authentication. So that is why that it is like it. You don't need to go to the post office. Post office comes to you. So in that sense, it's digital, and then digital signature. This so therefore that is one. Like for example, eKYC. So I don't need to visit banks. Last time I don't remember when I had gone. So that is what we mean, that bank comes to you. Like once you have the mobile, and then you don't need to opening your account, you don't need to go to the bank. So that if you give these 2-3 documents, my account can be opened. So that is how we mean. Now again, like for example, the one of the study have shown that that women's account are not there because and their banking is less because the way more than 4 kilometers. That has been also one of the reason why this. Now, since in order to open an account, you need to travel, say, 10 kilometers, and then you go and submit your form. So instead of that, today you can do it from here. In that sense, bank can come to the women. But now the issue is that how, because it is the DPI that has enabled that this system, digital way, you can get it done. So that's why it is said. But the now issue is that how do we ensure that this distance barrier has been removed. Now there has to be initiatives from the part of the banking, the person and the entity. So therefore the various kind of facilities and benefits that also that also incentivize the person concerned to open an account. So these are the way these are the these issues are being dealt with through DPI.
But I am educated enough to understand and avail those benefits of opening an account or the DPI. But what about the uneducated sector or the uneducated women? How can bank help them? Or how can
just to add, in their business, actually, they have an access to a huge lot of uneducated women whom either directly or indirectly in employment or outside. And she would like to take initiatives to actually, so I think she would get like, to be educated on how she can actually, yes, bring them into the mainstream.
Yeah, these are very important issues, and that there are various initiatives from the part of the government, and also some of the NGOs, they are also working on that. In fact, these various fintechs are also coming up. That's what I'm saying, that this is a very very effective combination, that many of the fintechs, they are doing this work. Like there is a microcredit, the Sadhan, I don't know, many of you would know. They are trying to breach this gap. Like they are going and collecting the information, digital and other things, and then connecting with the banks, and so that these gaps are filled in. But this number of such people are quite large. So therefore, this is just a beginning, and with progress of time, we would be able to solve this, bridge this gap. So one other questions.
So I think Okay, you have one more?
Like seek help from you. If we can come and have a tie-up with you, we can help, spread the awareness of DPI to those women and help them connect with banks so that even they can have the benefit.
Sure.
If you can help us any which way.
Yeah, I'll be happy to connect with you, right kind of place within the government machinery as well as the other fintech companies.
I think through the chamber, you can communicate
Sure.
this and, we can engage you in this. But I must say, the fintechs are providing those kind of apps or things like that. So, for example, we are into very micro retail distribution of mutual funds across Eastern India through our hundreds and thousands of partners that we have, and going to the very retail investors in extreme up country, in places where only cycle can go into that lane and those kind of places. And trust me, from older days, when to open a KYC and get those things done, the partners were required to go out to open with all the documentation and all that. That used to, so scalability was a challenge at that time. But today, with those apps and with eKYC, that's happening so smoothly, and that's why the whole financial, I mean, for example, the mutual fund sector in the retail is actually exploding, and because of the availability of these. So maybe you can explore some of those fintechs that Mr. Sarkar was, mentioning. Yeah. Thank you. Any other question, please? I think, Mr. Sarkar, your presentation was so. Yes, somebody's there.
Yeah, can I just
Yes,
make a
please.
small request?
Yeah.
Though it may not be pertaining to the digital public infrastructure or financial inclusion, but I was wondering that around the G20 forum there are associated forums which have also been set up, like the T20 and the C20 and all. So I was wondering if you could just throw a little bit of light on that, like Think Tank 20, which is being led by ORF Foundation, Communities 20. So if you could just lay a little bit of light on that as to how these associated forums are working vis-a-vis the G20.
Thank you. Actually, there are three, if I may say, that in G20 there are finance track, there is a Sherpa track, and there is an engagement group. Within this engagement group, this this finance track and the Sherpa track, these are purely intergovernmental. So there is no role of private. Even in the meeting, the private people are not allowed. But the engagement group were established, and the provision of engagement group is primarily because of involving the private sectors, where government doesn't play a significant role. It is the private initiative. Like for example, B20, there is a Think Tank 20s. In fact, India has also initiated a couple of them. So it is the industry-led one. Like you are taking think tank. Similarly, the NGO and think tank led one. So it has to be through the private think tank level. But then if you have any aspiration or any issues, I'll be more than happy to put you in touch with the appropriate people. Perfect. So essentially their job is to deliberate among themselves, keeping in mind overall priorities of the G20 and agenda, and they work and try to supplement. We also do interact with them. They also regularly be in touch with us and understand what is our priorities, and so that these two are also in line and converging rather than opposite. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Satyajit Chakrabarti.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Sir. I'm Professor Satyajit Chakravarti. I'm representing the University of Engineering and Management. I have a question specially regarding the UPI. As you said that UPI is already there in Singapore and some other, Asian countries. But I was wondering, what is the hindrance to have UPI in USA or Canada? Because like our banks are already there. State Bank of India, I've already seen that in Canada and US. So if they can, like the Indian origin vendors in, let's say, USA, Canada, all those places where mostly Indian people visit, if they can open an account in SBI Canada or such and have a UPI. So I was just wondering that what is, I mean, I would love to see that as an Indian, but what is stopping that, or for a global outreach? Because that is only some of the diaspora, very small amount of diaspora is having the access of UPI abroad. But we would like to see more of the diaspora, especially in countries where Indians mostly go, USA, Canada, UK, all these places. So
on a lighter note, before Mr. Sarkar collects his thoughts and responds, you found this was all around Asia.
Right.
Finally, we have reached at least till UK and France.
Yeah.
Eiffel Tower has UPI now.
Okay.
Okay. And when the Prime Minister went there, that started.
Okay.
It's about to cross Atlantic sometime soon, I'm sure.
So maybe it's
Sorry.
just going to happen very soon.
No, thanks for the question. Actually, this is a very complex question. So this is a very complex answer, but then I'll try to simplify and make it as simple as short as possible. Actually, there's these UPI. Why UPI, the DPI, is because it is interoperable. But in order to interoperable, you need to have a system in place. You have to first recognize that yes, UPI is one, we will accept. Now, who are the competitors? I'm trying to be informal slightly. It's the MasterCard, it is the other Visa and this. So who are the leader? It is the US. Who are the MasterCard? So they will lose hugely if it is done in one day. But it's the way we are penetrating this thing UPI, and people are also see this is a very new one. So you cannot, as I said, that most of the advanced economies, particularly G7 countries, they think that they are the leader, and they are in most of the cases that they are. So it's very, I mean, what I call, it would take a little bit of time. I'm sure the kind of resilience, kind of efficiency the UPI has demonstrated. So therefore, all this in order to make it interoperable, that you have to have this system in place. So that system would this existing system would need to be replaced in a manner. So therefore, that will take a little bit of time, but it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the questions. Now, can I request? Okay.
Before Mr. Rajkumar Agarwal delivers the vote of thanks, we would like to present a small memento to our guest in chief, Mr. Chanchal Sarkar.
Vice President Shri Rajkumar Agarwal to deliver a vote of thanks, please.
Shri Sarkar, members of the chamber, guests and friends. I consider it to be a pleasure and privilege for me to propose a hearty vote of thanks to our guest in chief, Shri Chanchal Sarkar, IES Advisor G20 International Economic Relations, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Thank you, sir, for your kindly sparing some of your valuable time to visit Calcutta and to address the members of our chamber on an important aspect of India's G20 presidency, digital public infrastructure and financial inclusion. Your illuminating address has very precisely highlighted how digital public infrastructure and financial inclusion would act as key enablers of economic growth and development. Friends, as India presides over the G20, it is an opportune moment to steer the wheel towards inclusive digital public infrastructure, both globally and locally, leaving no one behind. On that note, it is a happy augury that the government of India has pledged to donate $2 million to the Africa Digital Financial Inclusion Facility, ADFI, to promote digital financial inclusion in the continent and share the knowledge and expertise on digital public infrastructure. Meanwhile, government to person transfers through digital public infrastructure have also become a significant factor in women's adoption of financial services in India. Such noble initiatives taken by the government are indeed laudable. As members are aware, this is the fourth in the series of special sessions that our chamber has been organizing on India G20 presidency. For some of you who missed the previous sessions, our focus has been on India-France partnership in the Indo-Pacific, leveraging Indian Indo-Italian business and investment collaborations, and how India needs the world and the world needs India. My thanks are also due to the representatives of the media for their presence at the session. With these words, I would now request all of you to join me in carrying a hearty vote of thanks to Sri Chanchal Sarkar with appreciative acclamation.